Question 1. The risk matrix shows a high probability of air brake system failure due to component wear and environmental factors. During a pre-trip inspection, a commercial driver observes that the air compressor is functioning and building pressure, but they hear a faint hissing sound emanating from one of the air tanks. The driver also notes that the slack adjusters appear to be within the acceptable range of travel. Considering the regulatory framework for commercial driver's license pre-trip inspections, which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to safety and compliance? Option A. Report the hissing sound from the air tank as a potential leak requiring further investigation before operating the vehicle. Option B. Focus on ensuring the air compressor is efficiently building pressure, as this is the primary indicator of a healthy air brake system. Option C. Proceed with the trip, as the air compressor is building pressure and the slack adjusters are within range, assuming the hissing is minor. Option D. Adjust the slack adjusters to ensure they are as tight as possible, as this will compensate for any minor air leaks. Correct answer is A. Report the hissing sound from the air tank as a potential leak requiring further investigation before operating the vehicle. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because a commercial driver's license, CDL, pre-trip inspection requires meticulous attention to detail, especially concerning the air brake system. The air brake system is critical for vehicle safety, and any malfunction can lead to catastrophic accidents. Drivers must not only identify potential issues, but also understand the implications of those issues according to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, FMCSA, regulations. The challenge lies in accurately assessing the condition of multiple interconnected components and making a definitive judgment on the vehicle's roadworthiness based on those observations and regulatory standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and thorough inspection of each air brake component, comparing the observed condition against the requirements outlined in the FMCSA pre-trip inspection regulations, specifically 49 CFR Part 396, Appendix G. This approach represents best professional practice because it directly aligns with the regulatory mandate to ensure the vehicle is in safe operating condition before driving. A driver who correctly identifies a leaking air tank, for instance, and understands that this constitutes a critical defect requiring immediate repair, is fulfilling their legal and ethical obligation to public safety. This demonstrates a deep understanding of the functional importance of each component and its impact on overall braking performance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to overlook a minor air leak from a brake chamber, assuming it is insignificant. This is a regulatory failure because FMCSA regulations do not differentiate between minor and major leaks in brake chambers. Any leak that can be heard or felt is generally considered a defect that can compromise braking efficiency and is therefore a violation. Ethically, it's a failure to prioritize safety. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on the compressor's ability to build air pressure without checking the air tanks for leaks or proper drainage. This is a regulatory failure because the pre-trip inspection mandates a comprehensive check of the entire air brake system, not just the generation of air. The air tanks are crucial for storing this air, and leaks or water accumulation can severely impair braking. Ethically, it's a superficial inspection that creates a false sense of security. A third incorrect approach is to adjust slack adjusters that are already within the specified range without identifying a specific problem. While slack adjusters need to be within limits, unnecessary adjustment can indicate a misunderstanding of their function or a potential underlying issue with the brake mechanism itself. This could be a regulatory failure if it masks a more significant problem. And ethically, it's not a proactive safety measure. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic, component-by-component approach to the pre-trip inspection, guided by the FMCSA detailed requirements. This involves not just looking at components but understanding their function and the potential consequences of defects. When an issue is identified, the driver must consult the FMCSA guidelines or their company's policy to determine if the defect is critical and necessitates taking the vehicle out of service. This decision-making process prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance above all else, ensuring that only vehicles deemed safe are operated on public roadways. Question 2. Assessment of the brake system during a CDL pre-trip inspection requires the driver to identify and address potential safety hazards. Which of the following actions best represents a comprehensive and compliant approach to inspecting the brake system? Option A. Perform a quick visual check of the air brake chambers for any external damage, assuming internal components are fine. Option B. Rely on the vehicle's ability to move forward and backward as confirmation that the brakes are functioning adequately. Option C. Visually inspect brake pads for thickness, check brake fluid levels, and test the brake pedal for firmness and responsiveness. Option D. Briefly glance at the brake drums and listen for any obvious loud noises while the vehicle is being moved. The correct answer is C. Visually inspect brake pads for thickness, check brake fluid levels, and test the brake pedal for firmness and responsiveness. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because a commercial driver's license, CDL, pre-trip inspection requires meticulous attention to detail, especially concerning the brake system. The driver must not only identify potential issues, but also understand the severity of each issue in relation to safety and regulatory compliance. Misjudging the significance of a brake system defect can lead to unsafe operation, regulatory violations, and potential accidents. The challenge lies in applying knowledge of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR, to a real-world dynamic inspection. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and thorough inspection of all brake system components, including checking for leaks, proper function of air brakes, if applicable, brake fluid levels, brake pedal feel, and the condition of brake drums, shoes, and linings. This approach aligns directly with the requirements of FMCSR Part 396, Appendix G, which outlines the minimum periodic inspection standards. By meticulously examining each component and understanding the potential safety implications of any findings, the driver demonstrates best professional practice. This ensures the vehicle is operated safely and in compliance with federal regulations, prioritizing public safety and the driver's responsibility. Incorrect approach is analysis. Focusing solely on the visual appearance of brake pads without checking for proper engagement or signs of wear on the drum is an incomplete inspection. This fails to meet the comprehensive requirements of the pre-trip inspection, potentially overlooking critical issues that could lead to brake failure. It represents a regulatory failure by not adhering to the full scope of the inspection mandated by FMCSR. Performing a quick visual check of the air brake chamber without verifying air pressure or listening for leaks is insufficient. Air brake systems have specific operational checks, including pressure tests and leak detection, which are crucial for safe operation. Neglecting these steps is a direct violation of the operational safety checks required by FMCSR. Assuming the brakes are functional because the vehicle can be moved is a dangerous and negligent approach. The pre-trip inspection is a proactive measure to identify defects before operation. Relying on the vehicle's ability to move bypasses the critical safety checks and is a severe regulatory and ethical failure, potentially leading to immediate safety hazards. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field must adopt a systematic, rule-based approach. This involves understanding the specific requirements of the FMCSR for pre-trip inspections. When faced with a potential defect, the professional should ask, does this finding compromise the safe operation of the vehicle according to federal regulations? If the answer is yes, the vehicle must not be operated until the defect is corrected. This decision-making process prioritizes safety and compliance above all else, ensuring that the driver fulfills their legal and ethical obligations. Question 3. Comparative studies suggest that effective pre-trip inspections for the engine electrical system, encompassing the starter, alternator, battery, wiring, and sensors, are crucial for preventing roadside failures. During a pre-trip inspection, a commercial driver notices a slight, intermittent flicker in the battery warning light on the dashboard. The engine starts without apparent difficulty, and the driver has not experienced any prior issues with the electrical system. Considering the regulatory framework for commercial driver's license pre-trip inspections, which of the following actions best represents a compliant and professionally responsible approach to this observation? Option A. Only check if the engine starts normally and ignore the battery warning light, as the vehicle is currently operational. Option B. Document the intermittent flicker in the battery warning light as a minor observation and proceed with the trip, assuming it will resolve itself. Option C. Assume the flickering light is a sensor malfunction and not a critical issue, as the engine is starting and running. Option D. Conduct a thorough visual inspection of the battery terminals for corrosion and loose connections. Check the alternator belt for tension and wear, and listen for any unusual noises during engine cranking. Then report any findings to a supervisor or mechanic. The correct answer is B. Document the intermittent flicker in the battery warning light as a minor observation and proceed with the trip, assuming it will resolve itself. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge during a commercial driver's license pre-trip inspection, specifically concerning the engine's electrical system. The challenge lies in distinguishing between a minor, potentially intermittent issue and a critical fault that could lead to vehicle breakdown or unsafe operation. A driver must possess a thorough understanding of how various electrical components interact and the potential consequences of their malfunction. The pressure of time during an inspection, coupled with the responsibility for vehicle safety, necessitates a systematic and informed approach to diagnosing and reporting issues. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, multi-step diagnostic process that prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance. This begins with a visual inspection of the battery terminals for corrosion, loose connections, or damage, as these are common failure points. Next, the driver would check the alternator belt for proper tension and condition, as a loose or damaged belt directly impacts the alternator's ability to charge the battery. Following this, a functional check of the starter system is crucial. This involves listening for unusual noises during engine cranking and observing if the engine starts promptly. Finally, a visual inspection of visible wiring for chafing, fraying, or improper connections is essential. If any of these checks reveal a potential issue, the driver must then consult the vehicle's manual or a qualified mechanic for further diagnosis and repair. Documenting the findings meticulously. This approach aligns with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration (FMCSA) regulations, specifically 49 CFR Section 396.11, which mandates that drivers conduct a thorough pre-trip inspection to ensure the vehicle is in safe operating condition. The emphasis is on identifying and reporting defects that could affect the safe operation of the vehicle, thereby preventing roadside breakdowns and accidents. Incorrect approach is analysis. Ignoring a slight flicker in the battery warning light and assuming it is a minor, intermittent issue is a regulatory failure. The FMCSA requires drivers to report any defects that could affect the safe operation of the vehicle. A flickering warning light, even if intermittent, can indicate a problem with the charging system, alternator, or battery, which could lead to a dead battery and vehicle immobilization. This approach prioritizes expediency over safety and compliance, only checking the battery terminals for obvious damage and disregarding the condition of the alternator belt is an incomplete inspection, violating the spirit and letter of the pre-trip inspection requirements. The alternator belt is a critical component of the charging system. Its failure directly impacts the battery's charge. A driver is responsible for inspecting all critical components of the electrical system, not just the most visible ones, focusing solely on whether the engine starts without checking for unusual noises or observing the cranking speed is a superficial inspection. The starter system's performance can provide early indicators of potential problems, such as a weak battery or a failing starter motor. A prompt start without any signs of strain does not guarantee the system's overall health. This approach fails to identify potential underlying issues that could lead to a breakdown. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach pre-trip inspections with a mindset of proactive risk management. This involves understanding the interconnectedness of vehicle systems and the potential consequences of component failures. The decision-making process should follow a structured protocol. 1. Understand the regulatory mandate for thorough inspections. 2. Systematically inspect each critical component of the electrical system, including visual checks, functional tests, and listening for anomalies. 3. If any abnormality is detected, escalate for further diagnosis and repair, documenting all findings. 4. Prioritize safety and compliance over time constraints. This systematic approach ensures that potential hazards are identified and addressed before they compromise vehicle safety or lead to operational disruptions. Question 4. The efficiency study reveals that a common oversight during CDL pre-trip inspections is the thoroughness of air brake system operational checks. A driver is performing their pre-trip inspection and has confirmed the air compressor is building pressure to the cutout level. What is the most critical next step to ensure the air brake system is operating effectively and safely, as required by federal regulations? Option A. Visually inspect all air hoses and lines for any signs of damage or wear. Option B. Check the air pressure gauge for steady readings while the engine is running. Option C. Test the service brake application and release, and verify the parking brake holds the vehicle. Option D. Ensure the air dryer is functioning by observing its purge cycle. The correct answer is A. Visually inspect all air hoses and lines for any signs of damage or wear. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because a commercial driver's license, CDL, pre-trip inspection, specifically concerning the air brake system, is a critical safety procedure. Failure to properly assess air brake operation can lead to severe accidents, property damage, injury, or fatality. The driver must demonstrate a thorough understanding of how the air brake system functions under various conditions, not just a superficial check. The challenge lies in identifying subtle operational issues that might not be immediately obvious but could compromise braking effectiveness. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves actively testing and observing the air brake system's response to pressure changes and application/release cycle. This aligns with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR, Part 396, Appendix G, which outlines the vehicle inspection, repair, and maintenance requirements. Specifically, it mandates checks for proper operation of service brakes, parking brakes, and emergency brakes. Verifying that air pressure builds correctly, that the brakes apply and release fully and promptly, and that the system holds pressure without significant leaks demonstrates compliance and ensures the vehicle is safe to operate. This proactive testing is the best professional practice because it directly addresses the functional integrity of the braking system, which is paramount for preventing accidents. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to rely solely on visual checks of airlines and components without testing their operational function. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement for functional testing of the brake system. Ethically, it represents negligence by not performing a complete and adequate inspection. Another incorrect approach is to only check for air leaks when the engine is off. While leak checks are important, the pre-trip inspection must also assess brake application and release under operating air pressure. This approach neglects a crucial aspect of brake system functionality, potentially overlooking issues that only manifest under pressure. This is a regulatory failure, as it does not encompass the full scope of required operational checks. A third incorrect approach is to assume the brakes are working correctly if the air compressor builds pressure. While pressure buildup is a necessary first step, it does not guarantee that the service brakes will apply and release effectively, or that the parking brake will hold. This is a dangerous assumption that bypasses critical functional tests mandated by safety regulation, leading to a significant ethical and regulatory failure. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach the air brake system inspection with a systematic, functional testing mindset. This involves understanding the sequence of operations, ensuring the air compressor builds sufficient pressure, testing the service brake application and release, verifying the parking brake's holding capability, and checking for leaks under both static and dynamic application conditions. This process is guided by the FMCSR and the principle of ensuring vehicle safety above all else. When in doubt about any aspect of the system's operation, a professional driver will seek further diagnosis or repair rather than proceeding with a potentially unsafe vehicle. Question 5. To address the challenge of ensuring vehicle safety and regulatory compliance during a pre-trip inspection, a commercial driver notices a small, dark stain on the ground beneath the engine compartment that appears to be oil. The driver has a tight schedule, and the stain is not actively dripping. What is the best professional practice for handling this observation? Option A. Document the observation of the stain and report it to a supervisor or mechanic for evaluation before operating the vehicle. Option B. Wipe away the stain and proceed with the trip, as it is small and not actively dripping and the schedule is tight. Option C. Attempt to identify the source of the stain and make a minor adjustment to a hose clamp, assuming it's a simple fix. Option D. Ignore the stain as it is not a leak that is actively dripping, and the vehicle appears to be operating normally. Correct answer is A. Document the observation of the stain and report it to a supervisor or mechanic for evaluation before operating the vehicle. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge for commercial drivers, identifying and responding to potential issues with critical vehicle systems during a pre-trip inspection. The challenge lies in the driver's responsibility to ensure vehicle safety and compliance with regulations, which requires a thorough understanding of what constitutes a defect and the appropriate action to take. This demands more than just a superficial check. It requires judgment based on regulatory requirements and the potential impact on safety. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance. A driver who identifies a potential issue and takes the prescribed action documenting it and reporting it to a supervisor or mechanic is adhering to the core principles of the Commercial Driver's License, CDL, pre-trip inspection requirements. This proactive stance prevents potentially unsafe vehicles from entering public roadways, fulfilling the driver's legal and ethical obligation to operate a safe vehicle. This aligns with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, FMCSA regulations, specifically 49 CFR Part 396, which mandates thorough inspections and prompt repair of defects. An incorrect approach, such as ignoring a minor leak because it doesn't seem significant, represents a regulatory failure. FMCSA regulations do not allow for subjective interpretation of what constitutes a significant leak. Any fluid leak from a critical system, such as the braking system or power steering, is a defect that must be addressed. Ethically, it compromises the driver's duty of care to other road users. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to fix a suspected brake issue without proper training or authorization, is also a failure. This could lead to improper repairs, creating a more dangerous situation and violating regulations that require qualified personnel to perform maintenance and repairs. Furthermore, it bypasses the established reporting and repair procedures, undermining the safety management system of the motor carrier. Professional decision-making in such situations involves a systematic approach. First, conduct the inspection diligently, following the established checklist. Second, if a potential defect is observed, assess its nature and potential impact on safety based on regulatory knowledge. Third, if the defect is confirmed or suspected to be a safety concern, follow the established procedure for reporting and documenting the issue. This typically involves notifying a supervisor or designated mechanic and ensuring the vehicle is not operated until the defect is rectified. This process ensures accountability and adherence to safety standards. Question 6. Risk assessment procedures indicate that during a pre-trip inspection, a commercial driver notices the air brake system pressure is significantly lower than normal, and the low air pressure warning light is illuminated. The driver has confirmed the engine is running and the air compressor should be building pressure. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to ensure compliance with U.S. Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR, and maintain vehicle safety? Option A. Attempt to bleed the air tanks to release any trapped moisture, believing this might resolve the pressure issue, and then proceed with the inspection. Option B. Safely pull the vehicle over to the side of the road, shut down the engine, and conduct a thorough, systematic inspection of the entire air brake system, checking for audible leaks, damaged hoses, loose fittings, and the functionality of the air compressor governor and air tanks. Option C. Immediately contact dispatch and request a tow truck without performing any initial inspection, as any air brake issue is considered an immediate out-of-service condition. Option D. Continue the trip but drive at a reduced speed and avoid using the brakes unless absolutely necessary, hoping the air pressure will build up as the trip progresses. The correct answer is B. Safely pull the vehicle over to the side of the road, shut down the engine, and conduct a thorough, systematic inspection of the entire air brake system, checking for audible leaks, damaged hoses, loose fittings, and the functionality of the air compressor governor and air tanks. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because a low air pressure warning, especially during a pre-trip inspection, directly impacts the safety and operational readiness of a commercial motor vehicle. The driver must quickly and accurately diagnose the cause to prevent potential brake failure, which could lead to a severe accident. The urgency of the situation, coupled with the critical nature of the air brake system, demands a systematic and informed approach, adhering strictly to established inspection protocols. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves immediately stopping the vehicle in a safe location and performing a thorough, systematic inspection of the air brake system, focusing on potential leak points and the functionality of key components like the air compressor, governor, and air tanks. This aligns with the U.S. Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR, Part 396, which mandates that commercial motor vehicles be in safe operating condition and that drivers perform pre-trip inspections to identify and report defects. Specifically, the FMCSR requires drivers to check for leaks and ensure the air brake system is functioning properly. This methodical approach ensures all potential issues are addressed, prioritizing safety and regulatory compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to ignore the low air pressure warning and proceed with the trip, assuming it is a minor issue. This directly violates FMCSR Part 396(11), which requires drivers to inspect their vehicles and report any defects that could affect safety. Ignoring such a critical warning constitutes gross negligence and creates an immediate safety hazard, potentially leading to brake failure and a serious accident. Ethically, it breaches the driver's responsibility to public safety. Another incorrect approach is to attempt a quick fix without a proper diagnosis, such as simply adding more air to the system if possible, without identifying the root cause of the pressure loss. This is unsafe because it doesn't address the underlying problem, which could be a significant leak or a malfunctioning component. It also fails to meet the regulatory requirement of identifying and reporting defects. This approach is a superficial attempt at compliance rather than a genuine commitment to safety. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on the hope that the pressure will build up on its own or that the issue will resolve itself. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of air brake system mechanics and the potential consequences of low air pressure. The FMCSR require proactive inspection and maintenance, not passive observation. This approach is a failure to exercise due diligence and puts others at risk. Professional reasoning. When faced with a low air pressure warning during a pre-trip inspection, a professional CDL holder must follow a structured decision-making process. First, recognize the critical nature of the warning and the immediate safety implications. Second, consult the vehicle's operating manual and the FMCSR for guidance on pre-trip inspections and air brake system troubleshooting. Third, systematically inspect the air brake system, starting with obvious leak points, hoses, fittings, valves, and then checking the functionality of the compressor, governor, and air tanks. Fourth, if the defect cannot be immediately rectified and the vehicle cannot be safely operated, the driver must report the defect to the motor carrier and ensure the vehicle is taken out of service until repaired, as mandated by FMCSR Part 396(11). This process prioritizes safety, regulatory compliance, and responsible vehicle operation. Question 7. The risk matrix shows a high probability of steering system failure leading to a critical accident. During your pre-trip inspection, you notice a slight but noticeable looseness in the steering wheel, and you hear a faint grinding noise when turning the wheel sharply. You also observe a small, dark stain on the ground beneath the power steering pump. What is the most appropriate course of action according to CDL pre-trip inspection regulations? Option A. Report the looseness, noise, and suspected leak to a supervisor and do not operate the vehicle until the steering system is inspected and repaired by qualified personnel. Option B. Ignore the grinding noise and the stain, as the steering still feels functional enough to drive, and only report the slight looseness. Option C. Note the steering wheel looseness as minor and continue with the trip, planning to have it checked at the next scheduled maintenance stop. Option D. Attempt to tighten the steering components yourself to see if the looseness and noise can be resolved before reporting it. Correct answer is A. Report the looseness, noise, and suspected leak to a supervisor and do not operate the vehicle until the steering system is inspected and repaired by qualified personnel. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because steering system issues directly impact vehicle control, posing an immediate and severe safety risk. A driver's ability to detect, diagnose, and respond to steering problems during a pre-trip inspection is critical for preventing accidents. The challenge lies in distinguishing between minor, easily correctable issues and potentially catastrophic failures that require immediate removal from service. Careful judgment is required to ensure the vehicle is safe for operation without causing unnecessary delays. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and thorough inspection of the steering system components as outlined by Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration (FMCSA) regulations, specifically 49 CFR Section 396. 11. Driver's Vehicle Inspection Report, and Section 396. 13. Driver Responsibilities. This includes checking for play in the steering wheel, inspecting hoses and lines for leaks or damage, examining the steering shaft and universal joints for looseness or damage, and verifying proper tire inflation and condition. Any identified issues, particularly those affecting steering control or indicating potential failure, must be reported and corrected before the vehicle is driven. This aligns with the ethical obligation to prioritize public safety and regulatory compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to dismiss a slight looseness in the steering wheel as normal wear and tear without further investigation. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement of thoroughly inspecting all critical safety systems. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for potential hazards, as even minor play can worsen and lead to a loss of steering control. Another incorrect approach is to only visually inspect visible steering components and ignore potential internal issues or leaks. This is a failure to conduct a comprehensive inspection, as mandated by FMCSA guidelines, which require checking for leaks in power steering fluid lines and hoses. It bypasses the responsibility to identify potential failures that might not be immediately apparent but could lead to sudden steering loss. A third incorrect approach is to assume that any steering noise is simply a minor annoyance and not a safety concern. Regulations require drivers to report any unusual noises or vibrations that could indicate a mechanical defect. Ignoring such symptoms is a direct violation of the driver's responsibility to ensure the vehicle's mechanical soundness and poses a significant safety risk. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach steering system troubleshooting during a pre-trip inspection by following a structured checklist derived from FMCSA regulation. This checklist should include tactile checks, e.g., steering wheel play, visual inspections, e.g., leaks, damage to components, and auditory checks, e.g., unusual noises. If any abnormality is detected, the driver must assess its potential impact on vehicle control. If the issue compromises steering ability or indicates a risk of imminent failure, the vehicle must be placed out of service until repaired. This systematic process ensures compliance, prioritizes safety, and upholds professional responsibility. Question 8. Governance review demonstrates that a commercial driver is performing their pre-trip inspection. While checking the steering wheel and column, the driver notices a slight looseness when turning the wheel back and forth and observes a minor scuff mark on the steering column shroud. Considering the regulatory framework for commercial driver pre-trip inspections in the United States, which of the following actions best represents a professional and compliant approach to this situation? Option A. Only report the looseness in the steering wheel, as the scuff mark on the steering column shroud is likely just cosmetic damage and not a safety concern. Option B. Continue the inspection and assume the slight looseness is normal operational play and the scuff mark is cosmetic, as neither appears to be a critical failure that would immediately prevent the vehicle from moving. Option C. Report the scuff mark on the steering column as a defect, but disregard the slight looseness in the steering wheel, assuming it is within acceptable limits for this particular vehicle model. Option D. Report the observed looseness in the steering wheel and the scuff mark on the steering column as potential defects requiring further inspection by qualified personnel, as these could indicate wear or damage affecting safe operation. The correct answer is D. Report the observed looseness in the steering wheel and the scuff mark on the steering column as potential defects requiring further inspection by qualified personnel, as these could indicate wear or damage affecting safe operation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge during a pre-trip inspection where a driver encounters a potential issue with the steering system. The professional challenge lies in accurately assessing the severity of steering wheel play and its implications for vehicle safety and regulatory compliance. A driver must balance the need to identify potential defects with the operational reality of vehicle use, making a judgment call that prioritizes safety without causing unnecessary delays or vehicle downtime. The steering column's condition adds another layer, requiring the driver to look for physical damage that could compromise its integrity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and informed assessment of steering wheel play and column condition, directly referencing the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR, for the United States. Specifically, FMCSR Part 396, Appendix G, outlines the minimum periodic inspection standards. For steering wheel play, a common guideline, though not a single absolute number in all regulation, but a functional limit, is that excessive play can indicate worn steering components, tie rod ends, drag link steering gear. The driver must determine if the play is within acceptable operational limits, meaning it does not impede the driver's ability to control the vehicle safely. If the play is excessive, or if there is any visible damage, looseness, or binding in the steering column itself, e.g., cracked housing, loose mounting, excessive flex, it constitutes a defect that could render the vehicle unsafe to operate. This approach aligns with the ethical responsibility of a commercial driver to ensure the safe operation of their vehicle and the regulatory requirement to perform thorough pre-trip inspections to identify and report defects. Incorrect approaches analysis. Ignoring any noticeable looseness or play in the steering wheel, even if it doesn't feel drastically different from previous inspections, is a regulatory failure. FMCSR 396-11 mandates that drivers inspect their vehicles and report any defects or deficiencies that could affect safety. Overlooking play that exceeds acceptable operational limits or any visible damage to the steering column violates this requirement. Assuming that a small amount of play is normal, without a clear understanding of what constitutes excessive play according to industry standards or specific company policy, and therefore not reporting it, is also a failure. This demonstrates a lack of diligence in the inspection process and a potential disregard for safety. Focusing solely on the steering wheel's appearance and neglecting to check for physical damage or looseness in the steering column itself is an incomplete inspection. The steering column is a critical component of the steering system, and any compromise to its structural integrity or mounting can lead to a loss of steering control. This oversight constitutes a failure to adhere to the comprehensive nature of the pre-trip inspection mandated by FMCSR. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this situation by understanding that the pre-trip inspection is a critical safety procedure. The decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the regulatory requirements. Familiarize oneself with FMCSR Part 396 and any specific guidelines provided by the motor carrier regarding acceptable steering wheel play and steering system integrity. 2. Systematic inspection. Perform a deliberate check of the steering wheel for play by turning it back and forth while the engine is off and the wheels are on the ground. Simultaneously, visually inspect the steering column for any signs of damage, looseness, or binding. 3. Judgment based on safety. If any play feels excessive, or if there is any doubt about the steering system's ability to provide safe control, or if the steering column shows any signs of damage or instability, the vehicle must be deemed out of service. 4. Documentation and reporting. Accurately document any findings and report them immediately to the appropriate supervisor or maintenance personnel, as required by FMCSR 396. 11. Question 9. Consider a scenario where during a pre-trip inspection, a commercial driver notices that the engine oil appears darker than usual and has a slightly thicker consistency than expected, even though the oil level on the dipstick is within the acceptable range. The driver also observes no visible leaks around the oil pan. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with pre-trip inspection requirements and maintain engine lubrication system integrity? Option A. Note the oil's appearance and viscosity in the inspection report and proceed with the trip, as the oil level is correct and there are no visible leaks from the oil pan. Option B. Immediately report the oil's appearance and viscosity as a potential defect requiring further investigation by a qualified mechanic before the vehicle can be operated. Option C. Assume the darker color and thicker consistency are normal for this type of engine and oil, and continue the pre-trip inspection without further concern. Option D. Add a small amount of fresh oil to dilute the existing oil, which should correct the viscosity and color, and then proceed with the trip. The correct answer is A. Note the oil's appearance and viscosity in the inspection report and proceed with the trip, as the oil level is correct and there are no visible leaks from the oil pan. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in commercial vehicle maintenance. Identifying the root cause of a potential engine lubrication issue during a pre-trip inspection. The driver must not only recognize symptoms, but also understand the interconnectedness of the lubrication system components to ensure vehicle safety and compliance. The professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the problem without causing undue delay or overlooking a critical safety defect, all while adhering to strict pre-trip inspection protocols. The correct approach emphasizes a systematic and thorough inspection of the oil pan, oil filter, and the oil itself for any anomalies. This aligns with the U.S. Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration (FMCSA) regulations for commercial driver pre-trip inspections, which mandate checking for leaks, proper fluid levels, and the condition of filters. Specifically, checking the oil pan for damage or leaks, ensuring the oil filter is securely tightened and free from damage, and observing the oil's condition, color, consistency, presence of debris are all critical steps. The correct approach also considers the oil viscosity by observing its flow and consistency, which can indicate degradation or improper type. This comprehensive check ensures that the engine lubrication system is functioning as intended, preventing potential catastrophic engine failure and ensuring the vehicle is safe for operation on public roadways. This is best professional practice because it directly addresses the regulatory requirement to ensure the vehicle is in safe operating condition before commencing a trip. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the oil level without inspecting the oil pan for leaks or damage is a regulatory failure. The FMCSA requires a visual inspection of the entire lubrication system, not just a dipstick reading. Ignoring potential leaks from the oil pan could lead to rapid oil loss and engine damage, a clear safety hazard. Another incorrect approach, which involves only checking the oil filter for tightness but not for leaks or damage, is also a failure. A damaged or leaking oil filter can compromise the entire lubrication system, allowing contaminants into the engine or leading to oil starvation. Furthermore, neglecting to assess the oil's viscosity and condition by observing its flow and appearance is a missed opportunity to identify potential issues like overheating or contamination, which are critical for engine health and operational safety. These omissions represent a failure to conduct a complete and diligent pre-trip inspection, as mandated by regulations. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a driver to follow a structured inspection checklist, understand the function of each component being inspected, and be able to interpret visual cues. When an anomaly is detected, the driver must know when to report the issue for repair and when it is safe to proceed. This involves prioritizing safety and compliance above all else, understanding that a thorough pre-trip inspection is not merely a procedural step, but a critical safety responsibility. Question 10. The investigation demonstrates that during a pre-trip inspection, a commercial vehicle driver observed the engine cooling system. The driver noted that the radiator appeared clean externally, the coolant reservoir was filled to the marked line, and the upper radiator hose felt firm to the touch. However, the driver did not specifically check for any signs of coolant leaks around the radiator seams or hose connections, nor did they listen for any unusual noises emanating from the water pump area. Based on these observations and omissions, which of the following actions best reflects regulatory compliance for the engine cooling system inspection? Option A. The driver's inspection was sufficient as the visible components appeared to be in good condition and the coolant level was correct. Option B. The driver should have drained a small amount of coolant to check its color and consistency for signs of contamination. Option C. The driver should have focused solely on the radiator and coolant level, as these are the most critical components of the cooling system. Option D. The driver should have also inspected the radiator for any signs of leaks at its seams and connections, checked the water pump for any audible signs of malfunction, and ensured the lower radiator hose was also firm and free of cracks or excessive softness. The correct answer is D. The driver should have also inspected the radiator for any signs of leaks at its seams and connections, checked the water pump for any audible signs of malfunction, and ensured the lower radiator hose was also firm and free of cracks or excessive softness. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a common scenario during a commercial driver's license (CDL) pre-trip inspection, where a driver must assess the integrity and functionality of the engine cooling system components. The challenge lies in identifying subtle signs of potential failure that could lead to engine overheating, breakdown, and safety hazards on the road. A driver's judgment is critical in distinguishing between minor wear and critical defects that necessitate immediate attention. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns directly with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR, Part 396, specifically concerning the inspection of vehicle components. By thoroughly examining the radiator for leaks, checking coolant levels, inspecting hoses for cracks or softness, verifying the water pump for leaks or unusual noises, and ensuring the thermostat is functioning as intended. Though direct functional testing is limited during a pre-trip, visual cues and associated symptoms are key. The driver is fulfilling their regulatory obligation to ensure the vehicle is in safe operating condition. This proactive approach prevents potential breakdowns, protects the engine from costly damage, and most importantly, ensures the safety of the driver, other motorists, and the public by preventing unexpected vehicle failures. An incorrect approach that involves only a cursory glance at the radiator without checking for leaks or proper coolant level fails to meet the minimum inspection requirements outlined in the FMCSR. This oversight could lead to the vehicle operating with insufficient coolant, risking overheating and engine damage, which is a direct violation of the driver's responsibility to conduct a thorough pre-trip inspection. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring a slightly bulging or soft hose, is equally problematic. While not immediately catastrophic, a compromised hose is a precursor to a potential burst, leading to rapid coolant loss and engine failure. This demonstrates a failure to identify potential defects that could reasonably occur and impact safety, violating the spirit and letter of the regulations. Finally, an approach that dismisses a faint whining noise from the water pump area as normal engine sound, without further investigation, neglects a potential indicator of bearing wear or seal failure, which could lead to a coolant leak and subsequent engine damage. This demonstrates a lack of diligence in identifying potential mechanical issues. Professional reasoning in such situations requires a systematic approach. Drivers should follow a checklist derived from regulatory requirements and manufacturer recommendations. They must develop a keen eye for anomalies, understanding that even minor visual cues can signify significant underlying problems. When in doubt, it is always best to err on the side of caution and report any suspected issue for further inspection by a qualified mechanic. This decision-making process prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance above all else. Question 11. Upon reviewing the air brake system during a pre-trip inspection, a driver hears a distinct hissing sound emanating from the engine compartment, suggesting a potential air leak. The air pressure gauge indicates that the system is building pressure to the required operating range, and the brake pedal feels firm. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR, regarding vehicle safety? Option A. Proceed with the trip, assuming the hiss is minor and will likely resolve itself once the vehicle is in operation. Option B. Focus only on ensuring the air pressure builds to the correct level and the brake pedal feels firm, as these are the primary indicators of a functional air brake system. Option C. Conduct a thorough inspection of all air lines, fittings, and components for the source of the hiss, verify brake adjustment, and ensure air pressure builds and holds as per FMCSR requirements before operating the vehicle. Option D. Ignore the hissing sound, as it is not directly impacting the immediate ability of the brakes to engage or the air pressure to build. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough inspection of all air lines, fittings, and components for the source of the hiss, verify brake adjustment, and ensure air pressure builds and holds as per FMCSR requirements before operating the vehicle. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common but critical challenge in commercial vehicle safety, identifying and rectifying potential air brake system leaks and malfunctions during a pre-trip inspection. The professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the issue based on limited initial observations, and then implementing the correct corrective action while adhering strictly to regulatory requirements. A failure to properly address an air brake leak can have catastrophic consequences, leading to brake failure and accidents. The driver must balance the need for expediency with the absolute necessity of ensuring the vehicle is safe to operate. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and thorough inspection of the air brake system, focusing on identifying the source and severity of any leaks. This includes checking for audible hissing sounds, visually inspecting all air lines, fittings, and the air compressor, and verifying that the air pressure builds up to the required operating range as specified by Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR. Furthermore, ensuring the brake adjustment is within the manufacturer's and regulatory specifications is paramount. This methodical process directly aligns with the FMCSR, specifically Part 396, which mandates that commercial motor vehicles be in safe operating condition. The driver's responsibility is to ensure the vehicle meets these standards before operation. Incorrect approach is analysis. Ignoring the audible hiss and proceeding with the trip represents a direct violation of FMCSR Part 396. This is a failure to perform a required pre-trip inspection and a disregard for vehicle safety. It is ethically reprehensible and legally actionable. Assuming the hiss is minor and will resolve itself without further investigation, is also a violation of FMCSR Part 396. The regulations require that any identified defect that could affect the safe operation of the vehicle must be addressed. This assumption bypasses the required diagnostic steps and risks operating a vehicle with a potentially serious safety defect. Focusing solely on the air pressure buildup without investigating the leak is incomplete. While proper air pressure is essential, a leak indicates a compromised system that could lead to a sudden loss of pressure and brake failure, even if it initially builds up. This approach fails to address the root cause of the potential problem, violating the spirit and letter of the FMCSR regarding vehicle condition. Professional reasoning. When faced with a potential air brake leak during a pre-trip inspection, a commercial driver must prioritize safety and regulatory compliance. The decision-making process should involve 1. Immediate cessation of further inspection steps related to driving and focus on the suspected defect. 2. Systematic diagnosis. Listen for leaks, visually inspect all components, and perform functional tests as required by the pre-trip inspection checklist and FMCSR. 3. Verification of air pressure buildup and holding. 4. Checking brake adjustment. 5. If a leak is confirmed, the vehicle must be taken out of service until the defect is repaired and re-inspected. 6. Documentation of the defect and repair is crucial for compliance. Question 12. The control framework reveals that during a commercial driver's pre-trip inspection, a critical aspect of ensuring vehicle control involves the power steering system. Which of the following inspection procedures best addresses the potential for power steering system failure that could compromise safe operation? Option A. Examine the power steering hoses for any signs of bulging or swelling and ensure the power steering fluid is a clear amber color. Option B. Visually inspect the power steering pump for leaks. Check all associated hoses for cracks or damage. Confirm the power steering fluid level is within the manufacturer's recommended range, and operate the steering wheel to ensure smooth and responsive assist with the engine running. Option C. Check the power steering fluid level and verify that the steering wheel turns freely when the vehicle is stationary, without the engine running. Option D. Listen for any unusual noises emanating from the power steering pump while the engine is idling, and ensure the power steering fluid reservoir is filled to the top. The correct answer is B. Visually inspect the power steering pump for leaks. Check all associated hoses for cracks or damage. Confirm the power steering fluid level is within the manufacturer's recommended range, and operate the steering wheel to ensure smooth and responsive assist with the engine running. Explanation. Scenario analysis. A commercial driver performing a pre-trip inspection must identify potential power steering system failures that could compromise vehicle control. The challenge lies in recognizing subtle signs of malfunction beyond obvious leaks, as even minor issues can escalate and lead to a loss of steering assist, creating a significant safety hazard. This requires a thorough understanding of the system's components and their normal operating characteristics. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic inspection of the power steering pump for unusual noises, checking hoses for signs of wear, damage, or leaks, verifying the fluid level is within the recommended range, and confirming that steering operation is smooth and responsive with adequate assist. This comprehensive method aligns with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration (FMCSA) regulation, specifically 49 CFR Section 396.11, which mandates thorough pre-trip inspections to ensure vehicles are in safe operating condition. Proper identification of these potential issues before operation is critical for preventing accidents and ensuring compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to only check the fluid level and assume the system is operational if the level is adequate. This fails to address potential issues with the pump's internal components or the integrity of the hoses, which could lead to sudden loss of steering assist. This approach violates the spirit and letter of FMCSA regulations by not performing a sufficiently detailed inspection. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on audible cues from the pump, ignoring visual checks of hoses and fluid. A noisy pump might still provide some assist, but damaged hoses or low fluid can lead to a complete failure. This selective inspection is insufficient for meeting the safety standards required by law. A third incorrect approach is to only test the steering while the vehicle is stationary, without engaging the engine. Power steering assist is directly dependent on engine RPM, and issues might only become apparent under load or at operating speed. This incomplete operational check fails to identify critical failure points that would be evident during actual driving. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach the power steering system inspection by following a checklist that includes all critical components and operational checks. This involves a multisensory approach, listening for abnormal pump sounds, visually inspecting hoses and the pump for leaks or damage, verifying fluid level and condition, and performing an operational check of steering assist with the engine running. This systematic process ensures all potential failure points are assessed, aligning with regulatory requirements and best safety practices to prevent vehicle control issues. Question 13. Examination of the data shows a commercial truck engine is exhibiting intermittent sputtering during the pre-trip inspection. The driver has noticed this behavior for the past few days, but it has not prevented the vehicle from operating. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with commercial drivers' license pre-trip inspection regulations? Option A. Document the sputtering in the pre-trip inspection report. Note that it has not prevented operation and proceed with the scheduled route after informing the dispatcher. Option B. Immediately report the sputtering to the supervisor or designated maintenance personnel. Document the observation thoroughly in the pre-trip inspection report and await further instructions or a mechanic's assessment before operating the vehicle. Option C. Attempt to adjust fuel or air mixture settings based on past experience to resolve the sputtering before completing the pre-trip inspection. Option D. Conduct a basic visual inspection of accessible engine components for obvious damage or leaks, and if none are found, assume it is a minor issue and continue the route. The correct answer is A. Document the sputtering in the pre-trip inspection report. Note that it has not prevented operation, and proceed with the scheduled route after informing the dispatcher. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because a pre-trip inspection is a critical safety procedure mandated by regulations to ensure a commercial motor vehicle is safe for operation. Engine issues, even seemingly minor ones, can escalate rapidly and compromise vehicle control, leading to accidents. The driver's responsibility extends beyond simply identifying a problem. They must correctly assess its severity and take appropriate action according to regulatory guidelines. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly aligns with the core purpose of the Commercial Driver's License, CDL, pre-trip inspection regulations, which are designed to prevent unsafe vehicles from entering public roadways. By thoroughly investigating the engine issue, documenting findings, and communicating with the appropriate personnel, supervisor or mechanic, the driver is fulfilling their legal and ethical obligation to ensure vehicle safety. This proactive and systematic approach minimizes risk and adheres to the principle of safety first embedded in all CDL training and regulations. An incorrect approach that involves ignoring the issue or making a quick, unsubstantiated judgment is a direct violation of CDL pre-trip inspection requirements. Regulations mandate a comprehensive inspection and that any defects be reported and addressed. Failing to do so constitutes negligence and a disregard for public safety, potentially leading to severe penalties, including license suspension and fines, as well as civil liability in the event of an accident. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting complex repairs without proper training or authorization, also poses a significant risk. This can lead to further damage, create new safety hazards, and violate company policy and potentially regulatory guidelines regarding who is authorized to perform specific maintenance. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a systematic process. First, recognize the potential safety implication of any anomaly observed during the inspection. Second, consult the established pre-trip inspection checklist and relevant regulatory guidance to understand the required procedures for the observed issue. Third, gather objective information about the problem through observation, and if applicable, basic diagnostic steps outlined in training. Fourth, communicate findings clearly and accurately to supervisors or designated maintenance personnel. Finally, follow company policy and regulatory directives regarding the disposition of the vehicle, e.g., repair, delayed departure, or alternative transportation. Question 14. Performance analysis shows that a commercial motor vehicle's leaf spring assembly exhibits a slight, hairline crack on one of the spring leaves, and the air suspension system is currently holding air pressure with the vehicle at its normal ride height. Which of the following actions best represents a compliant and safe pre-trip inspection process for these conditions? Option A. Immediately report the hairline crack on the leaf spring for repair and thoroughly inspect the air suspension for any signs of leaks or physical damage to the airbags, even if it is holding air. Option B. Note the condition of the leaf spring and air suspension, and if the vehicle feels normal during the initial drive, consider the inspection complete without further action. Option C. Focus only on the air suspension's ability to hold air and maintain ride height, as leaf spring cracks of this nature are typically minor and do not pose an immediate safety risk. Option D. Document the hairline crack on the leaf spring and the air suspension's current operational status, then proceed with the trip, as the vehicle is currently functional. The correct answer is D. Document the hairline crack on the leaf spring and the air suspension's current operational status, then proceed with the trip, as the vehicle is currently functional. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a commercial driver's license, CDL, holder to make a critical judgment call regarding vehicle safety based on a subtle but potentially significant defect. The challenge lies in balancing the need for operational efficiency with the absolute imperative of safety, as mandated by CDL regulations. Misinterpreting the severity of a spring issue could lead to vehicle damage, cargo loss, or, most critically, a safety incident. The driver must possess a thorough understanding of the pre-trip inspection requirements and the potential consequences of compromised suspension components. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves meticulously inspecting the leaf spring assembly for any signs of damage, such as cracks, breaks, or excessive sagging. This includes checking for loose or missing U-bolts and ensuring the spring seats are intact. For air suspension system, the driver must verify that the airbags are free from leaks, tears, or abrasions, and that the system maintains proper ride height. This detailed, systematic inspection aligns directly with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration (FMCSA) regulations for pre-trip inspections, specifically those pertaining to the suspension system. The FMCSA mandates that drivers ensure all safety-critical components are in good working order before operating a commercial motor vehicle. A damaged leaf spring or a leaking airbag compromises the vehicle's stability, braking, and overall control, directly violating the driver's responsibility to operate a safe vehicle. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to dismiss a slight bend or minor crack in a leaf spring as insignificant, especially if the vehicle appears to be riding normally. This fails to recognize that even minor damage can propagate under stress, leading to catastrophic failure. Ethically and regulatorily, this is a failure to adhere to the good working order standard required by FMCSA. Another incorrect approach is to assume that if the air suspension system is holding air and the vehicle is at the correct ride height at the moment of inspection, it is acceptable, without checking for leaks or physical damage to the airbags themselves. This overlooks the potential for intermittent leaks or developing damage that could fail during transit, violating the FMCSA requirement for a thorough inspection of all suspension components. A third incorrect approach is to focus solely on the visual appearance of the springs without checking for proper mounting and securement, such as loose U-bolts or damaged spring seats. This neglects the critical aspect of how the springs are attached to the vehicle, which is essential for their function and safety. Such an oversight is a direct violation of the driver's duty to ensure the entire suspension system is secure and operational. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field must adopt a proactive and thorough approach to pre-trip inspections. This involves understanding that good working order means more than just the absence of immediate, obvious failure. It requires anticipating potential issues and recognizing that minor defects can escalate. The decision-making process should prioritize safety above all else, adhering strictly to the FMCSA guidelines. When in doubt about the condition of a safety-critical component like the suspension, the professional course of action is to report the suspected defect and have it inspected by a qualified mechanic before operating the vehicle. This demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance and ethical responsibility. Question 15. The assessment process reveals a commercial driver performing a pre-trip inspection. Regarding the steering gearbox, which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration (FMCSA) guidelines for a CDL pre-trip inspection? Option A. Confirming the steering wheel turns freely without any resistance, regardless of gearbox condition. Option B. Wiping down the exterior of the steering gearbox to ensure it is clean and free of dirt. Option C. checking for excessive play in the steering wheel and visually inspecting the gearbox for leaks and adequate lubrication. Option D. Attempting to tighten any perceived looseness in the steering gearbox to ensure a firm feel. The correct answer is C. Checking for excessive play in the steering wheel and visually inspecting the gearbox for leaks and adequate lubrication. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in pre-trip inspections, ensuring the steering gearbox is functioning correctly and adequately lubricated without overcomplicating the inspection or missing critical safety aspects. This scenario is professionally challenging because a driver must balance thoroughness with efficiency, adhering strictly to regulatory requirements for commercial vehicle safety. The driver needs to apply knowledge of the steering system's mechanical principles and the specific inspection procedures mandated by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, FMCSA, for commercial driver's license, CDL holders. Correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the FMCSA requirements for inspecting the steering system, specifically focusing on the gearbox's operation and lubrication, as outlined in the CDL pre-trip inspection manual. This approach ensures the driver is verifying the physical integrity and operational readiness of a critical safety component. Proper lubrication is essential for the smooth functioning and longevity of the gearbox, preventing excessive wear and potential failure. Checking for play and leaks directly assesses the gearbox's operational status and its containment of lubricant, both vital for safe steering control. This aligns with the overarching ethical and regulatory responsibility of a commercial driver to operate a vehicle that is safe for themselves, other road users, and the public. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the visual appearance of the gearbox, without checking for operational issues or lubrication levels, is professionally unacceptable. This fails to meet the regulatory mandate of verifying the operation of the steering gear. A gearbox might look clean but still have excessive play or insufficient lubrication, leading to steering problems. Another incorrect approach that involves making adjustments to the steering gearbox during a pre-trip inspection is also professionally unacceptable and a direct violation of FMCSA regulations. Pre-trip inspections are for inspection and reporting of defects, not for performing maintenance or repairs. Such actions could lead to improper adjustments, creating new safety hazards or masking existing ones, and would be considered unauthorized maintenance. A third incorrect approach that only checks the steering wheel for looseness without examining the gearbox itself is insufficient. While steering wheel play is an indicator, it doesn't isolate the issue to the gearbox and misses crucial checks on the gearbox's internal condition and lubrication. The professional reasoning process for similar situations involves a systematic approach. First, understand the specific regulatory requirements for the inspection item, in this case, steering gearbox operation and lubrication as per FMCSA guidelines. Second, identify the key indicators of proper function and potential defects for that component. Third, execute the inspection steps diligently, verifying each required check. Fourth, if any defect is found, follow the established procedure for reporting and addressing it, which for a pre-trip inspection means noting the defect and not operating the vehicle until it is corrected. Question 16. Analysis of a commercial vehicle driver performing a pre-trip inspection of the steering linkage, specifically focusing on the tie rods, drag links, pitman arm, and idler arm, reveals several potential inspection methods. Which of the following methods best adheres to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR, for ensuring the safe operation of the vehicle? Option A. Actively checking for excessive play or looseness in the tie rod ends, drag link connections, and at the pitman arm and idler arm attachment points by attempting to move the components by hand or with a pry bar, in addition to a visual inspection for damage. Option B. Gently wiggling the steering wheel while the vehicle is stationary to gauge the overall responsiveness of the steering system, without physically inspecting the individual linkage components. Option C. Relying on the vehicle's previous inspection reports to confirm the steering linkage was noted as satisfactory, and only performing a cursory visual check during the current pre-trip inspection. Option D. Visually inspecting the steering linkage components for any obvious external damage such as cracks or severe corrosion, and then proceeding if no such damage is apparent. The correct answer is D. Visually inspecting the steering linkage components for any obvious external damage such as cracks or severe corrosion, and then proceeding if no such damage is apparent. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because a pre-trip inspection requires a driver to identify potential safety defects that could lead to an accident. The steering linkage is a critical safety system, and any compromise in its components can result in loss of vehicle control. The driver must possess a thorough understanding of what constitutes a defect and the potential consequences, adhering strictly to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR, for pre-trip inspections. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly aligns with the regulatory mandate to ensure the vehicle is in safe operating condition before driving. Specifically, it requires the driver to actively inspect for looseness, damage, or wear in the tie rods, drag links, pitman arm, and idler arm. This proactive identification of potential steering system failures is a core requirement of FMCSR Section 396.11, which mandates pre-trip inspections to detect and report any defects that could affect the safe operation of the vehicle. By identifying and reporting these issues, the driver fulfills their legal and ethical obligation to prevent unsafe vehicles from entering public roadways, thereby protecting themselves, other motorists, and the public. An incorrect approach that involves merely looking at the components without checking for play or damage is a regulatory failure. FMCSR Section 396.11 requires more than a superficial visual check. It necessitates a functional assessment to identify defects. Failing to check for looseness in the tie rod ends, for example, could allow the steering wheel to move significantly before the wheels respond, a critical safety hazard that would be missed by a passive observation. Another incorrect approach, such as assuming the steering linkage is fine if there are no obvious external cracks, is also a failure. Internal wear or damage, which can cause looseness and eventual failure, is not always visible externally and requires tactile inspection for play. This overlooks the requirement to identify all defects that could affect safe operation. The professional reasoning process for similar situations involves a systematic, checklist-driven approach to the pre-trip inspection, as outlined in FMCSR. Drivers should be trained to understand the function of each component and the specific types of defects to look for. When a potential defect is identified, the driver must follow established procedures for reporting and ensuring the defect is corrected before the vehicle is operated. This involves a commitment to safety that supersedes the desire to complete the inspection quickly or to avoid potential delays. Question 17. Process analysis reveals that a commercial driver is conducting a pre-trip inspection and notices that one of the vehicle's red rear reflectors has a small chip in its plastic casing, though the reflector itself still appears to be reflecting light. Additionally, the driver observes that the lens cover of one of the tail lights is slightly fogged from moisture ingress, but the tail light bulb is still functioning and emitting light. Based on the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR, what is the most appropriate action for the driver to take regarding these two items? Option A. Report only the chipped reflector for repair, as the fog tail light lens does not prevent the bulb from illuminating. Option B. Report the chipped reflector and the fog tail light lens as defects requiring repair before operating the vehicle. Option C. Consider the chipped reflector acceptable as long as it reflects light, and the fog tail light lens acceptable as long as the bulb functions, and proceed with the trip. Option D. Report only the fog tail light lens for repair, as the chipped reflector is a minor cosmetic issue. The correct answer is B. Report the chipped reflector and the fog tail light lens as defects requiring repair before operating the vehicle. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge during a pre-trip inspection where a driver must interpret the condition of vehicle lighting and reflectors to ensure compliance with safety regulations. The challenge lies in distinguishing between minor cosmetic issues and defects that compromise safety and legality. A driver must possess a thorough understanding of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, FMCSR, pertaining to vehicle lighting and reflectors to make an informed decision about the vehicle's roadworthiness. Failure to correctly identify and address a critical defect can lead to roadside violations, out-of-service orders, and potential accidents. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic inspection of all required lights and reflectors, comparing their condition against the specific requirements outlined in FMCSR Part 393, Subpart B. This includes verifying that all lights are present, securely mounted and functioning correctly, and that reflectors are clean, undamaged, and properly positioned. For example, cracked lens on a tail light that allows moisture ingress and corrosion of the bulb socket is a functional defect that must be addressed. Similarly, a missing or obscured reflector poses a significant safety hazard, particularly at night or in low visibility conditions, and is a clear violation. This approach represents best professional practice because it directly aligns with the regulatory mandate to ensure the vehicle is in safe operating condition before commencing operation, thereby preventing potential hazards and legal repercussions. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to overlook a cracked tail light lens, assuming it is a minor cosmetic issue as long as the bulb still illuminates. This is a regulatory failure because FMCSR Section 393.11 states that all lighting devices must be in good working order and securely attached. A cracked lens can lead to bulb failure, short circuits, and reduced visibility of the light's output, all of which are safety concerns. Another incorrect approach is to ignore a reflector that appears slightly faded but is still visible. This is a regulatory failure because FMCSR Section 393.13 specifies the requirements for reflectors, including their visibility and condition. Fading can significantly reduce their reflectivity, making the vehicle less visible to other drivers, especially at night. Dismissing these as minor issues demonstrates a lack of adherence to the spirit and letter of the regulations designed to prevent accidents. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach pre-trip inspections with a mindset of proactive safety and regulatory compliance. The decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the specific requirements of FMCSR Part 393 for all vehicle components, particularly lighting and reflectors. 2. Performing a thorough systematic inspection looking for both functional and structural defects. 3. Applying a conservative judgment. If there is doubt about a component's compliance or safety, it should be flagged for repair. 4. Documenting all findings and ensuring that any identified defects are corrected before operating the vehicle. This systematic and cautious approach ensures that the vehicle meets all legal and safety standards, protecting the driver, the public, and the carrier. Question 18. Stakeholder feedback indicates that some commercial drivers are not consistently identifying critical wear and damage in suspension systems during pre-trip inspections. When inspecting the suspension system, which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to the regulatory framework for ensuring vehicle safety? Option A. Relying on the absence of any visible damage to the tires as an indicator that the suspension system is in good condition. Option B. Visually inspecting all springs, shock absorbers, control arms, and bushings for cracks, bends, leaks, tears, or excessive play, and testing for looseness. Option C. Briefly checking the springs for obvious sagging and listening for any loud noises from the suspension during a short test drive. Option D. Focusing only on the shock absorbers and ensuring they are not visibly leaking any fluid. The correct answer is B. Visually inspecting all springs, shock absorbers, control arms, and bushings for cracks, bends, leaks, tears, or excessive play, and testing for looseness. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a commercial driver to make a critical judgment call regarding the safety of a vehicle's suspension system based on visual inspection and tactile feedback. The challenge lies in distinguishing between minor wear that is acceptable and significant damage, or wear that compromises the vehicle's stability, braking, and overall roadworthiness. A driver's decision directly impacts public safety, cargo integrity, and their own livelihood, necessitating a thorough understanding of regulatory standards and the potential consequences of a compromised suspension. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic inspection of all suspension components, including springs, shock absorbers, control arms, and bushings. The driver must look for visible signs of damage such as cracks, bends, or breaks in metal components. They must also check for excessive wear, indicated by torn or deteriorated rubber bushings, leaking shock absorbers, or sagging springs. The driver should also test for excessive play or looseness in the components. This comprehensive approach aligns with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration (FMCSA) regulations, specifically 49 CFR Section 396.11 and Section 396.13, which mandate that drivers perform pre-trip inspection to ensure the vehicle is in safe operating condition. Identifying and reporting any defects that could affect safe operation is paramount. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to only visually inspect the most obvious components like the springs, ignoring less visible but equally critical parts such as bushings and shock absorber mounts. This failure to conduct a thorough inspection violates FMCSA regulations by not ensuring all safety-critical systems are checked. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss minor leaks from shock absorbers as insignificant. While some minor seepage might be permissible, significant leaks indicate a loss of damping capability, which directly affects vehicle control and braking, thus posing a safety hazard and contravening the spirit and letter of the pre-trip inspection requirements. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on the absence of audible noises during a brief test drive. While noises can be an indicator, the absence of them does not guarantee the suspension is free from wear or damage that could manifest under load or during critical maneuvers. This approach is insufficient, as it omits the detailed visual and tactile checks required by regulation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach suspension system inspection by following a standardized checklist derived from regulatory requirements and manufacturer guidelines. This checklist should prompt a detailed examination of each suspension component, looking for specific indicators of wear and damage. The driver must then use their training and experience to interpret these findings in the context of safety. If any component exhibits damage or wear that could compromise vehicle stability, braking, or tire wear, it must be reported and addressed before the vehicle is operated. This systematic and evidence-based approach ensures compliance with regulations and prioritizes safety above all else. Question 19. Research into the impact of component wear and potential leaks within the hydraulic brake system on vehicle safety during a commercial driver's pre-trip inspection reveals several potential inspection strategies. Which strategy best aligns with the regulatory framework for a commercial driver's license pre-trip inspection, focusing on the master cylinder, wheel cylinders, brake lines, and brake pads/shoes? Option A. Briefly check the master cylinder fluid level and assume the rest of the hydraulic system is functional if the brake pedal feels firm. Option B. Focus only on the master cylinder and wheel cylinders, as these are the primary components controlling brake pressure. Option C. Perform a quick visual scan of the entire brake system, prioritizing speed to complete the inspection efficiently. Option D. Visually inspect the master cylinder for fluid level and signs of leakage, check brake lines for kinks or damage, and ensure brake pads/shoes show adequate thickness. The correct answer is D. Visually inspect the master cylinder for fluid level and signs of leakage, check brake lines for kinks or damage, and ensure brake pads/shoes show adequate thickness. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because a commercial driver's primary responsibility during a pre-trip inspection is to ensure the safe operation of the vehicle, which directly impacts public safety. The hydraulic brake system is a critical safety component. A failure in any part of this system, from the master cylinder to the wheel cylinders, brake lines, or pads/shoes, can lead to a loss of braking capability, potentially resulting in a severe accident. The driver must possess a thorough understanding of what to look for and how to interpret potential issues. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic and thorough inspection of all components of the hydraulic brake system, looking for specific indicators of malfunction as mandated by the Commercial Driver's License (CDL) pre-trip inspection regulations. This includes checking for leaks, proper fluid levels, damage to lines, and wear on pads/shoes. Adhering to these established inspection protocols ensures compliance with federal and state regulations designed to prevent vehicle failures and protect lives. It demonstrates a commitment to safety and professional responsibility. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the master cylinder without examining other components is a regulatory failure. The regulations require a comprehensive inspection of the entire hydraulic brake system, not just one part. Ignoring wheel cylinders, brake lines, or pads/shoes means a significant portion of the system's integrity is unverified, violating the spirit and letter of the pre-trip inspection requirements. Another incorrect approach that involves assuming the brakes are functional because the pedal feels firm, without physically inspecting the components for leaks or wear, is also a regulatory and ethical failure. A firm pedal can sometimes mask underlying issues like a slow leak or worn pads that will eventually lead to brake failure. This approach bypasses the mandated visual and tactile checks, demonstrating a lack of diligence and a disregard for safety protocols. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness, performing only a cursory glance at the brake system, is a critical failure. The regulations are designed to be comprehensive to catch potential problems. Rushing the inspection compromises its effectiveness, potentially allowing a dangerous defect to go unnoticed, which is both a regulatory violation and an ethical breach of the driver's duty to operate a safe vehicle. Professional decision-making in similar situations requires a commitment to following the established pre-trip inspection checklist meticulously. Drivers should be trained to identify common failure points and understand the implications of each. When in doubt about the condition of any component, the professional decision is to report the concern and have it addressed by a qualified mechanic before operating the vehicle. This prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance above all else. Question 20. The evaluation methodology shows that a commercial driver's understanding of engine basics is critical for a comprehensive pre-trip inspection. When performing this inspection, which of the following approaches best demonstrates a driver's ability to integrate knowledge of the four-stroke cycle, engine types, diesel vs. gasoline, and engine layout to identify potential safety issues? Option A. Visually inspecting the exhaust manifold for cracks and checking the radiator for leaks, assuming these are the primary indicators of engine health regardless of the engine's operational cycle. Option B. Prioritizing the identification of the engine cylinder count and general layout, e.g., V-engine, while ensuring all visible fluid levels are within the manufacturer's recommended range. Option C. Focusing on the audible sounds the engine makes during startup and idle, correlating any knocking or sputtering with potential issues in the power or intake stroke, and noting any distinct fuel smells indicative of diesel or gasoline. Option D. Confirming the presence of the air filter and oil filter, and verifying that the battery terminals are clean and free of corrosion, without considering the engine's internal operational processes. The correct answer is B. Prioritizing the identification of the engine's cylinder count and general layout, e.g., V-engine, while ensuring all visible fluid levels are within the manufacturer's recommended range. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that a commercial driver's ability to identify and understand basic engine principles is crucial for performing a thorough pre-trip inspection. This scenario is professionally challenging because a driver must not only visually inspect components, but also possess the foundational knowledge to interpret what they are seeing and its potential implications for vehicle safety. Misinterpreting engine sounds, smells, or visual cues related to the engine's operational cycle can lead to overlooking critical defects, thereby compromising road safety and violating federal motor carrier safety regulations, FMCSR. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly aligns with the intent of the CDL pre-trip inspection requirements, which are designed to ensure vehicles are operated safely. Understanding the four-stroke cycle, intake, compression, power, exhaust, allows a driver to recognize abnormal engine behavior that might indicate a problem within one of these stages. For instance, a rough idle could suggest an issue with fuel delivery or ignition during the intake or compression stroke, while unusual exhaust smells might point to incomplete combustion during the power or exhaust stroke. Differentiating between diesel and gasoline engine characteristics is also vital, as their operational nuances and common failure points differ. A diesel engine's reliance on compression ignition, for example, means that issues with compression ratios or fuel injection timing are paramount, whereas a gasoline engine's spark ignition system presents different potential failure modes. Recognizing engine layout, e.g., inline, V-type, aids in locating specific components during the inspection. Adhering to these principles ensures a comprehensive and informed inspection, fulfilling the driver's regulatory obligation under FMCSR Part 396, specifically Section 396.11, which mandates a driver's vehicle inspection report. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on external visual checks without considering the engine's operational cycle is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of understanding of how the engine functions, leading to a superficial inspection. For example, a driver might not recognize that a persistent knocking sound, indicative of pre-ignition or detonation during the power stroke, is a serious internal engine problem that requires immediate attention, thereby violating the spirit and letter of the FMCSR regarding safe operation. Another incorrect approach might involve misidentifying a component due to a lack of knowledge about different engine layouts or types. For instance, Mistaking a glow plug system component on a diesel for a spark plug on a gasoline engine could lead to incorrect troubleshooting or reporting, failing to identify a genuine safety concern, and thus breaching the driver's duty of care and regulatory compliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a systematic approach. First, perform the mandated visual inspection of all specified components. Second, engage sensory input. Listen for unusual noises, smell for abnormal odors, and feel for excessive vibrations. Third, correlate these observations with the driver's understanding of the engine's four-stroke cycle and the specific engine type, diesel or gasoline. Fourth, if any anomaly is detected, consult the vehicle's manual or a qualified mechanic if unsure, and always document any suspected issues on the driver's vehicle inspection report as required by FMCSR Section 396. 11. This layered approach ensures that both regulatory requirements and practical safety considerations are met.